Hey everybody, how's it going? Good to see you guys again. Just getting things rolling a few minutes before class time, but welcome back to anybody who's here now and anybody who's watching at any later time. Hope you guys are doing well. About 3 minutes, and then when 10 o'clock hits, we'll go right into our lecture for today. This is Monday, May 11th for our 10 to 10:50 class here at Chapman Intro to Philosophy. Feel free to say hi if you're here, and you guys had a great weekend and you're doing well heading into last week of classes. We have a little more business to finish, but we're almost there. So anyways, good to see you guys, and just get comfortable. Hi, Andy. Good morning. Nice. Hi, Jordan, Lily, everybody else. Good to see you guys. Hi, Jessica. Cool, almost ready. Just another minute or so. Bridger, good to see you there. Hi, Annie. Good to see you too. Okay, well, it's basically 10 a.m., basically class time, so I'm going to let us get started. Welcome back, everyone. Hopefully you're having a great morning and had a good weekend. This is the last week of lecture and review, and then next week on Tuesday we've got our final exam. Just so everyone's 100% clear about the time, it's Tuesday the 19th. And then the the time slot for us, just so we're good to go. Sorry, here, I'll find it. Yeah, so Tuesday the 19th, 1:30 to 4 p.m. So next Tuesday at 1:30, that's when I'll distribute the test form to everybody in the class through Blackboard, and then you'll have till 4 to return the answers back. But hey, Kaylee, good to see you too. Other than that, today's the last lecture meeting, so today's the last day where we're taking new notes. We're finishing our whole topic of the value of life and what makes a human life go well. And then Wednesday and Friday this week, those are going to be 2 lectures, well, not lectures, but review sessions. So this week we've got our plans set out. Today is a lecture, then 2 review sessions. Next Tuesday is the final. Also, okay, I'm sure everybody knows, but make sure you do not forget that the paper is due today. It was actually due as of 10 a.m. just now. So you should be already have sent it to me to my email no later than the class time. But you know, I'm not going to be that punitive if it's still coming in the next hour or so. But just if you have not already done so, please, with no delay, send me that that second essay. If it's coming to me much later, especially if it's not turned in today, then there will be some late credit that I have to deduct. But I'm sure most all of you didn't have that problem. Nonetheless, if there are no other questions about those topics, about the class, about what's happening next, then I'll just start the lecture. Let me say this. I will grade these essays that you've turned into me this week, and they'll all be done and finished by the end of the week, and you'll be able to get your grade on all the assignments and your current class grade going into the final. So I'll notify you by Blackboard later in the week, sometime close to the weekend, and then you'll be able to check on your scores over the weekend so that you know exactly where you're standing going into that final. One more thing too, the course evaluations are now active, and so I'm sure you guys have noticed maybe some emails from the school requesting that you fill those out. I would love it if you did have a chance, if you have a couple moments free, just go ahead and please, if you could, provide some evaluation and comment for this class. It's very good. It's helpful for me and for all of your professors to get a little feedback. I try my best to do the best job I can for you guys, but I love to hear your comments, and it really means a lot to me and the school. So if you have a chance, I would appreciate it. Just go into your emails and take a few seconds whenever you do have a moment free, and that'd be a great favor to me if you could just fill out that evaluation. Okay, guys, so everything's clear, we're good. Then I'm gonna just finish our last lecture today. So we're now on the topic of what would make a human life go well. What is a life well lived? What is the way to live your best life, I guess, is one way to put it. And different philosophers have offered different arguments about that question. So first we looked at Plato and the ancient Greek view. They said that to live the best life, you need to get your soul in the proper order. And he thought that the soul was structurally similar to the state, that the state had three parts: the merchants, the kings, the warriors, and they are each doing a different designated role for the society. The kings lead, they make the decisions, they should be wise. The warriors fight and defend, they should have courage. And the merchants produce goods and services which are traded in the market, and they should have temperance, which is self-control. If all the three parts do their job and they defer to the king and don't try to overthrow it, then that's a well-ordered and just society. Now, in your case, as an individual human being, the soul, they claimed, was divided in three parts. The appetitive part, which are kind of like the merchants, that's the part of you that has appetites and desires. The spirited part, that's kind of like the warriors, that's the part of you that has a lot of pride and passions, very competitive. And then the rational part of you, which is parallel to the kings, that's the intellect within you that can conduct dispassionate and rational decision-making. And that should be the leader within you. So if your soul functions like the good republic, where you allow reason to rule, where the lower parts do their job according to their virtue, but they stay in their own lane, and in that case your life will go well. Bad behavior comes from a vicious imbalance among the parts of your soul, and even if nobody knows about unjust behavior and no one catches you, you're still doing yourself a disservice and harming your soul by putting the parts of it at war with each other inside, even if no one knows. So that was Plato. Empower the intellect and allow it to rule over the lower parts of the soul, pretty much. Then there was Sartre. Sartre, on the other hand, had a much more individualistic paradigm. He said, there's no objective fact about what the best life is. In fact, in existentialist thought, existence precedes essence, which means that you don't have any essential identity or nature when you're first born, but you make choices through life because you have free will, and over the course of time, you shape and you create your essence to be whatever it is. So basically, you're already the one who's the author of your own individual being. And the choices that you make to create the essence that you do kind of stands as your example of how you think everybody should live. So if you're like a Christian, then when other people are Christians, you support their decision because it's the same decision that you made. So your values and your priorities are demonstrated through the choices that you make for yourself. That's why he says that when you create yourself, you also create all of mankind. It's a metaphor, obviously, but in creating the one essence of your own being, that is simultaneously an example of how you think anyone in principle should live. So from Sartre's paradigm or perspective, there's no one-size-fits-all universal way to live the best life, but there's just ever so many different individual essences, each one of which stands as the example of how you think people should live. Along with that, though, he says that it's a little weird and hard to make choices when, according to existentialism, there's no objective basis for what the, quote, right decision is. So in the case of like his student that was struggling between the choice of sticking with his mother who's becoming sick or going to fight in the army. There's no like fact as to what he ought to do or what represents the right choice apart from what he himself decides to do. That's the basis of another famous quote from Sartre that I don't think I got to mention last time, but just very briefly. He says that according to existentialism, we are all condemned to be free, which sounds kind of like an oxymoronic statement, because usually being free and being condemned are like opposites of each other. You get condemned to prison, so you cannot escape your own freedom. You're free to be or do anything, but the one thing you're not free to do is to not be free. So you're burdened in a way by your own freedom. The responsibility, the obligation to make choices and to create your essence amidst a set of facts in which there's no objective, correct way to do it. But anyway, that's Sartre compared with Plato. Now we have one more author on this topic that we will speak about now today. So the last look on what makes a life go well is this author, Derek Parfit. Okay, so Derek Parfit lived from 1942 until 2017. He's a British philosopher. He actually died on January the 1st of 2017, so relatively recently. And he had an article which was published on the last day of his life. So, I mean, right up to the very end of his life, he was active in academic publishing and philosophy. In 1984, he wrote a book. And in the book, there's a section which has been placed in our text. So from 1984, the title given in our anthology is What Makes Someone's Life Go Best? What Makes Someone's Life Go Best by Derek Parfit from 1984. What makes someone's life go best? What's the blueprint? What's the recipe? What's the path that one would take to live the best life they possibly could live? Now, each of us is a human being living a life. And each one of us wants our life to go well, right? I mean, nobody wants their life to go poorly or to go bad or to be painful or anything or miserable. So you want a good life, and so do I, and so does everyone, I think. That must mean then that you have at least some general ideas about what kind of things would lead towards that outcome. So I wonder if you, just aside from our essay that we're going to talk about, what would you throw out there? What kind of things would have to happen in your mind for you to say, doesn't get better than this. I'm living my best life. I did it. Like, what kind of stuff do you think would have to be in place or to occur for you to feel like you're at the pinnacle of the best life you could live? What are the factors there, at least plausibly or reasonably? So one thing, just being rich, okay? So certainly having some kind of financial means is necessary as a baseline for a good human life, because wealth provides the purchasing power of goods and services, which everyone would like to have, and financial security. What else? To be happy, okay, good career. So you could argue personal happiness derived from whatever things. Sometimes it's coming from the wealth and the security and the power that comes from having wealth. Emotional stability, probably that's important, right? Good mental health, happy relationships. You say here, in Brian's case, good career, feeling like you have a productive and stable line of work, maybe something rewarding. Having fulfilling relationships, Caesar, right? Yeah, so, I mean, being the richest person but having no friends might not be the best life you could possibly live. So probably having healthy, nurturing, supportive relationships with friends and family would be big. Wealth, wisdom, of course, being intelligent. You shouldn't feel like you're living a good life if you're just being dumb, even if you had a lot of money. So intelligence, I would think, moral goodness, happy, healthy relationships, health, wealth, wisdom, and all those things. But that's just speaking from the point of view of general, everyday common sense. Now we're going to sort of see how Derek Parfit tries to lay out the issues for us. And it's, I think, a pretty good essay by Professor Parfit here. It's a good way of breaking down a subject logically that you could argue in many cases is just something that we think about informally and without much structure. Okay, so to get the answer to our question, what makes someone's life go best, he says that you have to think about different theories of self-interest. Because to live a good life, you have to pursue your self-interest, clearly. But now we have a different question. What is it that promotes your self-interest? Like, what type of things boost up your well-being or self-interest? So he has 3 theories of this, which are all going to give us slightly different answers to our question about what makes the life go as well as it could go. So clearing the board so I can discuss 3 theories of self-interest. Okay, so starting with this first one, one theory of self-interest is what he calls hedonistic theories of self-interest. Okay, and so what they say is that what would be best for somebody is what would best is what would make them happiest or most pleased throughout their life. Okay, so what would be best? Make a person happiest, or since happiness is oftentimes equated with pleasure, we could say / most pleased. Hedonistic theories of self-interest. So the goal of life, in this view, the way that you would want to live your best life, would be to just try and have as much pleasure in it as possible. So whatever it is that produces pleasure for you, whether it's certain types of experiences, psychological states, possessions, get that stuff. And the more and more of it, the more happiness, the more pleasure generated, the better the life is going. So the whole goal of life, according to this standard, would be as much pleasure as possible. A life with less pleasure is a worse life than a life which has got more. So seek out pleasures in whatever possible way. And if you're getting them and you're getting more and more of them, then that means your life is going better and better. So if you're chasing the good life and you're chasing your own self-interest, then you should be chasing pleasurable experiences, according to this theory. So it's all about seeking out and experiencing pleasure. Okay, that's hedonistic theories of self-interest. But it's not the only one, so we're going to go over 2 more. The next one that he discusses is called desire fulfillment theories. Okay, so what the desire fulfillment theories say, something just slightly different. They say that what would be best is what would best fulfill your desires throughout your life. Okay, so the desire fulfillment theory says that the main goal of life that you would have, if you want to have the best life you could live, is to fulfill the desires you have. So desires are just a sort of different word for things you want, things that you yearn for, that you're striving for, that you wish would happen. To have a desire means that you don't have it yet. Okay, right? So like me, I already own the Nintendo Switch, so I can't say I desire that. I guess I used to desire it, but I already fulfilled that desire, you see, because I made it something that I now have. So what is the fulfillment of a desire? It's when something that you wish becomes real in your life. Like, for example, right now you're a college student, and I think that that obviously means that you have at least this desire that you graduate and you get your degree. And when you do get it, supposing that you do, of course, mission accomplished for that desire. Now it's been fulfilled. Now what was like a hope or a dream or a wish has become real. Desires can be of all kinds of things, right? They could be a desire for certain possessions. They could be desire for certain types of relationships, certain types of experiences, certain type of titles or recognition. I mean, athletically, like I run a lot, and I'm a person that's always desired to someday run a 5-minute mile. I haven't quite gotten there yet, you know, but I think maybe if I train hard enough, I can. Suppose that I someday hit that time, you know, and I go under 5 minutes, then that'll be a fulfilled desire for me. So there's all kinds of things that people can and do desire. This theory of self-interest says if you're trying to live the best life you can live, then get more of those desires met, fulfill more of them. So I don't know, if for example, this is just playing with numbers, but suppose there were 2 people and each one had exactly 100 desires for different things. If the one person has fulfilled 70 of them and the other person has fulfilled like 60, then the one with more fulfillment is having a better life. They're getting more of the things they want. So if you're not getting any of your desires fulfilled, that's not a good life because you're getting literally nothing that you want happening. And the best life, I guess, would be everything you ever wanted, it actually did happen for you, so all your desires were fulfilled. And the gray area in the middle is just the more or less. More desires fulfilled equals better and better life. And so you can keep boosting up your self-interest and well-being depending on the quotient of total to fulfilled desires as like a ratio, for example. Okay? So that's another way of trying to think about what leads to the best life. There's a slight difference, though, the first and the second theories, so let me make this point. In the pursuit of your desired fulfillment, sometimes you don't experience pleasure, but the fulfillment is what you're really after. So like, you know, take back the example of you being a student right now, meaning that you do at least have this desire to finish your studies and to finish and get a degree. Now, is it always pleasurable, the pursuit of that desired fulfillment? No. I mean, you guys know as students that sometimes it's quite stressful, isn't it? Having to be evaluated, having to learn all these subjects and master the material and to receive high marks from your different professors. It's a burden in a way. Of course, it's, I think, intellectual labor of love in a sense, but for some people, it's more or less annoying or like a hassle or whatever. But when you fulfill the desire at the end of getting the degree, then the goal has been met. So unlike with the hedonistic theories, it's just about the feeling of pleasure. So if something's not making you feel happy or pleased, you should stop doing it. But on the desire fulfillment theory, you do whatever you have to do to get these fulfilled desires. Are there sometimes hardships and pains and dissatisfaction along the way? Sure. But the fulfillment of the desire is the number one point in this perspective, not necessarily the constant experience of pleasure. Okay, so that's the second theory of self-interest. Now, there's one more, and the third is called, he calls it objective list theories. Okay, so the objective list theory of self-interest is definitely sort of a different breed from both of the first two. Because the first two, whether it was hedonistic or desire fulfillment, they both said that what's best for you depends on what you find pleasure in or what you personally desire. So there's a little bit more like subjectivity in the first two. If you don't like something, then it's not good for you to get it, right? You have to desire it or find pleasure in it, according to the first two theories. But in this third one, it's different because it says, no, there are just certain things that are good for you, whether you like them or not, pretty much. And so your goal in life is to get those things, even if you don't want them. Even if you find no pleasure in them, the best life is the one that satisfies those things. So according to the objective list theory, the way he puts it, there are certain things that are either good or bad for us. And that's supposed to be like an objective fact. Whether you agree or not, there are certain things that are good or bad for you, whether you want the good things, whether or not you don't want the bad things. Okay, so there are certain things that are either good or bad for us, like objectively. Whether or not we want the good things, or to avoid the bad things. Okay, so like as an example here of what we're talking about, all the theory then is saying is that for you to live your best life, there are certain things that are just factually, objectively good, and it's not a matter of personal opinion. And so whether you agree or not, you better get those things because they're just objectively good for you. Now, some individuals that are maybe unhealthy or misinformed or misguided may have a different opinion about what they want in their life, but if their opinion differs from the objective list, then they're just wrong about that. So like, for example, health, right? Physical health. Perhaps me and you can agree that that's not just a personal opinion. Is health good for a person? I say it is, you say it's not. No. There's no debating this. This is not up to debate. Health is just good. That's just a brute fact. That's just an objective fact. If a person out there says, forget health, I just want to like eat the worst food and never ever stay active, health doesn't matter to me. The pleasurable experience of being, inactive and eating a lot of unhealthy food, that's more important. According to the objective list theory, that person's just wrong and they need to get on the right page with their health. So health is a good thing. And if you don't agree with that, you're just wrong and you better get healthy anyway. Okay, so notice how that's different. The objective list theory says we could make a list of things that are objectively good for people. And the best life would be the life where they actually get as many of those things checked off the list as possible. Even if they don't find any pleasure in these things, they're just certain things that are good for people. So like health, wealth, wisdom, moral goodness are objectively good. It's not just a personal opinion that they're good, so you should get those things in your life. Now, in the other two theories, something's good for you if you want it. But in this theory, if something's good, then you should want it. And if you don't want it, something's wrong with you, not with the fact that it's objectively good. So to like a drug addict out there who says, my health doesn't matter, but I just want to be on these hardcore drugs and that's my life, which I love. That life is a bad life according to the objective list theory. But maybe if the person's feeling like happy and pleased, then they could be living a good life according to the other theory or one of the other theories, you see? So there's differences here among the three. Now, having stated each of the three perspectives, Parfit just goes back over the first couple of them and wants to clarify and add some additional details. So returning back to the first one, the hedonistic theories, he has this to say. So I'm going to erase this and I'm going to add a couple of additional small points about the first hedonistic theory of self-interest. Yeah, like wisdom, right? I mean, getting intelligent, becoming smart, that can be hard. It can take a lot of work, right? On the objective list theory, suppose you find it annoying and not fun at all to try and build up all the intelligence and wisdom that would make you this wise person. If it's not pleasing, the hedonistic theory might say, well, don't do it. But in the objective list theory, it doesn't matter whether you like it or not. Like, it's just a fact that you should be smart. Okay, so first of all, though, so the most plausible, he says the most plausible version of the hedonistic theory is what he calls preference hedonism. Okay, and so what preference hedonism says is just this, that which one of two experiences is more pleasurable depends on what the individual prefers. Okay, so Okay, so what it just says there is, which one of two experiences is more pleasurable depends on which is preferred by the person. Okay, so it's not too much of a significant additional piece of info, but it's something that he mentioned, so I want to explain it. Let me give you this example. Suppose that there's these two choices for an individual in terms of what they could do with their evening. So option number one is like, I don't know, stay at home with a nice book, enjoyable, reading next to the fireplace, maybe with their pet dog, just kind of a chill night at home reading by the fireside. That's option number one. Okay, now option number two, let's say it's like a social event. I mean, before the pandemic, right? I'm giving you this example, pretending that we have a world where there's still social gatherings. But anyway, option number two, you go to like a social function, it's kind of like a party, there's music, there's people mingling, hanging out, people being loud, it's a raucous social environment, right? So which one is more pleasurable? It's a trick question. Do you follow me? What's the answer to my question? Which one, option one or two, is more pleasurable? That just depends on what? It depends on something, but what? What could it depend on? Not too hard to say. Let me know. You heard the two options, right? Which one is the more pleasurable choice? Can we say? So it's like quiet night with a book versus the party. And you say it depends on what you would enjoy more. Exactly, right? So it depends on the person's preference. Yes. And different people do have different preferences according to their different personality and temperament. So take the person that's a little more of the bookish, introverted type, maybe they even have social anxieties about, being in a crowd like that. They feel a little pressed and awkward. So you could say of that type of person, the first option is preferred, and so that's more pleasurable to them. To the other type of person, the social animal, the outgoing life of the party, they may be thinking, first of all, what's a book? I would never sit down and actually read one of those, but I would love to go to that party. It sounds like a lot of fun. Now, that's a different type of person with a different preference. But we can't just say there's an objective answer, can we? Like, one of them is the more pleasurable. It does depend on a preference. Good. The author Parfit gave this example, too. So, real-life anecdote from the life of Sigmund Freud, widely known as this famous father of modern psychoanalysis and psychology, even though he said a lot of weird stuff that's been later on not fully credited. But anyway, yes, Freud, towards the end of his life, he was actually getting very sick, and so he was put on certain pain-killing medications, yeah? The thing was that these medications, though, they would make his thought muddy and dull, like he wasn't as sharp and clear in his mental acuity while he was on these drugs, even though the pain was less. So what Freud actually preferred was to opt to not take those medications. Even though he would suffer more physical pain, he would have greater clarity of thought. So presented with these two options, more physical pain but dull thinking, more physical pain but clear thinking versus less physical pain but dull thinking, he actually would have preferred the option which involves more physical pain, as long as he could still think clearly. So that just reminds us that in assigning one of two options more preference, and thus being more pleasurable, even physical pain can sometimes be something which a person prefers depending on the context, right? Like there are some people out there, of course, that have all kinds of like sexual proclivities, like masochists and stuff. And for that type of person, if you say, well, a sexual experience with pain or without, they may prefer the one with physical pain of some limited quantity, I guess, because that's something that they find psychologically pleasurable or whatever. So just understand that we can't narrowly interpret pleasure as what involves the physical stimulus, which is typically associated with pleasurable feelings. Even pain in some cases can be the more desired outcome, depending on what it is being compared with and what the context and reasons are. Okay, so preference, hedonism, is just one little narrower specification of the first type of theory. Now about the second one, okay? He also wants to add some additional commentary to the second type of theory, which we call the desire fulfillment theory. And he says, the most reasonable version of that is what he calls the success version of the theory. So desire fulfillment theory can be divided into two further subcategories. So he says the implausible version, one that he rejects, is what he calls the unrestricted version. But the plausible version, the one that he thinks is better, that he prefers, he thinks is more reasonable, is what he calls the success version of the theory. So I now have to just help you guys understand the difference between these two versions of the desire fulfillment theory. I'm crossing this one out because he says that is implausible. The first one he does not like. This one, though, he says that's better and that's the correct one. Okay, so what are those two things? So the unrestricted version of the desire fulfillment theory basically says this, that the desires that count, that matter, towards the question how well your life is going, are all the desires with no restrictions at all. So the unrestricted version of the theory says any desire you have at all, no matter what it is about, is a desire which matters towards how well your life is going. But the second version is the one he thinks is better. So the second one says, no, it's not every desire that actually matters. The only desires that really have an impact on how your life is going and how your quality of life is are the ones that are relevant to your own projects and goals. So the kind of desires that, if they were fulfilled, they could be attributed to you as a success in your life. Okay? Now, to show the difference between the two theories and why the second one's more reasonable, he gives us this little example. Okay? So, think of this example. Once again, the scenario requires us to return into mind to the pre-pandemic days where we would just mingle and congregate in public places, okay? So remember, like, you know, Beckman Hall, there's a Starbucks on the first floor, something like that, like a coffee shop where there's a common area where people that are strangers can sometimes just have a chat and a friendly conversation and strike up a little talk. Suppose that you were out there in, you know, some type of coffee shop setting, and you ended up having a friendly conversation with a stranger who you just, you know, converse with. So you guys have polite discussion, exchanging pleasantries, and getting to know each other just a little bit during this short conversation. Now, suppose that at the end of the conversation, they open up and reveal something personal to you, which is kind of touching. They say this, anyway, I've got to go because they got to leave now and go on their way. So it was really nice to talk to you. Glad we had a chance to just get to know each other and talk. I want to say this to you as I'm leaving. You know, I used to take these little casual human interactions for granted. You know, just having a friendly conversation with a new person. I used to just not pay much attention to that. But nowadays, I focus a lot more on it, and it means a lot more to me because I'm going to just tell you, I recently came down with a tough diagnosis medically. I just found out from the doctors that I'm diagnosed with a certain form of cancer, and so I'm struggling with that. I'm trying to beat the disease. They say I have a decent chance to you know, go into remission and beat the cancer, but that's a battle that I have to fight. Anyway, just have a great day. It was nice to talk to you, and maybe we'll see each other again sometime, right? So they just say that to you as they head off. They opened up and told you about the fact that they recently received a diagnosis of cancer, which they're now trying to beat, obviously. So, okay, let's put it in your perspective. You just had that conversation with the person. You thought they were cool and nice. You had a friendly chat. They opened up and told you about their disease, and now they're leaving, and you guys are just, you have that one chance interaction, and like ships passing in the night, on your separate ways now, back to your everyday lives. What do you think would be perhaps a desire that you, a good human being, would maybe form at the end of that conversation as they left? And, you know, I'm just going to tell you it's related to them and their diagnosis. So having said that to you, you, good person that you are, now maybe desire or wish or hope for what thing involving that? What do you think it could be that I'm trying to get from you here? What's the desire that might be formed by the person engaged in conversation with our sick stranger? That they recover. Okay, good, exactly. Yes, Caesar, William, that was it. You just hope that they'll get better and that they go into remission. You hope that they beat it. So they're leaving and you're sitting there and thinking, wow, that was a cool interaction, but I was really moved by that last part. I hope they beat it. They seem like a good person and I hope that they do get better. Okay, now let's just take this scenario a bit further. Suppose that years pass and somewhere out there in the world, completely unknown to you because this person was not like a real stable friendship, it was just a chance meeting, but suppose that years pass and somewhere out there in the world they actually did get better and they did fully recover from cancer. So in that case, was your desire fulfilled? Yes, it was fulfilled because it was something that you wanted, you desired it, and it ended up happening and becoming real. So that's a fulfilled desire. But now here's what Parfit says about that situation. In his view, that doesn't really count, though, as something that has improved your self-interest or well-being. It doesn't really conduce towards your better quality of life. And the reason, according to him, is because although it is a fulfilled desire, it's a desire that's fulfilled, but it's not about your own projects, goals, or your own life. So basically, the unrestricted version, he says, it takes too many desires into account. It says all the desires you have matter towards how well your life is going. But the success version narrows them down a little and says the only desires that really matter to you for your quality of life are the ones that are related to your own projects, goals, and life. So like if you start a business, you want the business to succeed. If it succeeds, that's a fulfilled desire, which is a success attributable to you. So that one would count. If you have a desire, I don't know, if you, let's say, have kids, I think you'd have a desire that they have healthy and happy lives and that they prosper in life. And if that ends up happening, then that would be a fulfilled desire, which bears on your own success and the project of having children that you started. So those would relate and they would count. But not just any random desires should, according to Parfit anyway. Like if I have a desire right now in my mind, because I love science fiction, that there's aliens in outer space. Suppose that it's actually true, somewhere far, far away that I'll never know about, they're actually out there. That could be considered, I guess, like in theory, a fulfilled desire, but it doesn't really have anything to do with my own projects and goals in life, and so it's not like a success to me if aliens exist. Therefore, those would be ruled out of consideration for relevance by this theory, by this version of the desire fulfillment theory. Okay, so he's just saying, in terms of looking at the theory which says fulfill your desire to live your best life, he would narrow that down a little bit and say fulfill your desire to live your best life, but the ones that count are only those that are bound up with your own projects. Okay? Now, there's one further little specific detail that he adds to this whole desire fulfillment discussion. He next distinguishes two types of desires. Okay? So that's what we have to talk about now. Okay, two types of desires. So on the one hand, there are local and then global. So the local desires, as he labels them, those are just desires that are about desires for particular things that you can pretty much satisfy or fulfill in the short term, like in the immediate here and now. So desires for particular things that you can fulfill in the short term. Global desires, though, are like, they're the bigger picture, the grand desires. These are the desires that pertain to your whole life or a large part of it. Okay, so Okay, so these global desires are the big ones for your whole life, and these are the little particular ones, the local ones. Now, let me give you an example and see if you can deduce or analyze which one of those kinds of desires it is. So after this class is over, I'm going to get myself some lunch, and I'm already thinking about what I want to eat, and I'm kind of thinking that I'd like to maybe get like a burrito, because there's a local Mexican food place right near my apartment here, which has good, curbside pickup and all of that. So anyway, if I want that and that's something I desire, which kind of desire do you think that is, local or global? My desire for having a burrito for lunch today. Which one would that be, if you could judge? Okay, your two options, local or global. Definitely local, correct, Brian, because that's not like a desire for like a life goal. It's a desire for something pretty simple and straightforward, a particular thing, which if I really wanted to, I could fulfill it in the next 15 minutes, and I might. Now, on the other hand, though, suppose that I have a desire for a happy family. Would you say that'd be local or global? I want to have a family, and I want that to be a happy, healthy family. Should this be considered local or global desire? Kind of easy enough, but let's just get it out there, and then we'll talk a bit. The family, desire for a happy, healthy family. Global desire, yes, because that's not something that I can just say, oh, I've got a few errands to run. Let me just check the family, happy, healthy family off my list this afternoon while I've got a few hours free. No, I might be able to go pick up a burrito or like an item at the mall. Well, I used to be able to do that, but anyway, you understand, like a consumer purchase of whatever kind, if you go on Amazon or something, I could fulfill that pretty well and fast. But the global desires, they range over your whole life, so it takes a lifetime of upkeep and maintenance and sustenance for some of those global desires to be met. If I want to be healthy, just a healthy human specimen, I can't say I already did that. I'm over with that. Now I'm on to the next goal, because it's something that takes a lifetime of maintenance to keep in place. So health, wealth, wisdom, happy family, happy relationships. I can't say what I already had the happy relationship, so I'm moving on. I mean, a happy, good relationship requires long-term maintenance. So the global desires are the ones about your whole life. They're the ones like if you want to get your degree, that's a bigger picture goal. It's not your whole life, but it spans over years and years of it, right? If I want to have a good career and I want to, build that, that's something that also takes time and it endures over a lifespan. So in the end, we've got both desires and we're trying to fulfill both. But this author says that the global ones are the ones that matter even more. So from the desire fulfillment theory perspective, what you should be doing to live your best life is going out in life to fulfill the maximum number of the biggest goals that you have. And he says that since the global desires matter more than the local ones, they have greater weight. So even if you could, let's say, satisfy a more numerous quantity of local desires, if that came at the expense of even one of your big global desires, then that would be a poor trade-off, because it's not just about quantity, it's also about quality. Say, for example, you could get addicted to a hardcore drug tomorrow, and ever since that happens going forward, you're going to want that drug, and that's the desire that's going to keep popping up. Like, I want to be high on that drug, I want to feel the intoxicating effects. Suppose that you could gain a lifetime supply of the drug, so you'd be able to satisfy all those little local desires each time they popped up. Over time, the repeated drug-addicted behavior could amount to a lot of desire fulfillment, but only of the local kind. But notice that while you're doing that, you're blocking the global desire fulfillment of lifetime health and non-addiction. So a trade-off of the more important global desires for a more numerous quantity of the local ones is a bad trade, according to him, because they matter so much more that they should be prioritized, even if you could trade one or whatever for a much more extensive range numerically of the local ones. But sometimes people do that. They seek out the local pleasure and sacrifice the big picture. You're going to cause yourself to lose your mind and intelligence through the pursuit of little frivolous thrills and stuff like that. Okay, now last thing I'm going to say about this author in the end. At the tail end of the essay, he gives us his own view about what makes your life go best, and it's actually kind of like a mashup, a combination here of the objective list theory and the desire fulfillment theory. He says they're each halfway correct, but they're missing something that the other part provides. Okay, so back to our objective list theory. It says it's not about what you want or what makes you happy or pleased. It's about getting the things that are objectively good. So health, wealth, wisdom, moral goodness, good relationships. That's the kind of stuff that you should get in this life, even if you don't want it or care about it, because it's not up to you. It's just a fact that those are good things. And if you don't agree, something's wrong with you. Now, what Parfit says is that that's halfway true, but it's not completely true. Yes, you should get the objectively good things in life, but he says you have to also want them. Otherwise, you won't feel any fulfillment or satisfaction from getting them. You know, you just feel like I'm going through the motions. People have told me to get an education and have this family and have this good career, and I've done it, but I don't care about any of that. So you could argue then that you also need to have that backed by the pleasure that comes from wanting those things. So he says, on the other hand, the desire fulfillment theory is only halfway correct. Because yes, you should get things in life that you desire, otherwise you won't feel fulfilled, but you shouldn't just desire anything, because some desires are bad. Like take the case of the serial killer, right? Who has the desire to kill as many people and never get caught. Suppose that they do that and they get away with it. They could go to their grave with a smile on their face, feeling like a very fulfilled life. I got everything I wanted, which was to kill a ton of people. But is that a good life? Definitely not. Okay, like Adolf Hitler or something. You could say he had goals in life, and some of them, big ones, he did achieve. But those are evil and wrong goals to have. So it's not just any desire fulfillment that should credit a good life. Therefore, here's what he says you got to do. Bring these two things together. To live your best life, Parfit says simply this. Make the things on the objective list be your desires. Just force yourself, if you do not already, train yourself to desire the objectively good and right things, and then go and fulfill those desires. That will be the best of both worlds. Because in that case, will you get the objectively good things? Yes. But will you also fulfill your desires? Also yes, because now you've simply made your desires coincide with what's objectively good. So many ways to put it, but you could think about it like this. Get the things in life that you desire, but make yourself desire the things that you should desire. Okay, like train yourself and focus your mind on the desire of the right things in life. And when you desire the good and righteous things, then when you fulfill them, you'll both fulfill what you want, but you'll also do the things that are considered objectively good. So it's not enough to do one but not the other. It's not enough to get all the things you want, but they're really evil and horrible things. It's also not enough to get all the things that are considered objectively good, but you don't want them. These two things have to be brought together. So focus yourself on the desire for what you ought to desire. Desire the good and righteous things in life. And then the fulfillment of them will simultaneously satisfy you and will align with an objective sense of right and wrong. You know, it's not a good thing either to be a person who gets everything that's considered good but could care less, nor to be the sort of person who gets everything they want, but they want evil and terrible things. So some component of fulfillment is important, and some component of objective rectitude is important too. So try and make your life good. According to this author, there's something that has to do with the fulfillment of desires and some component that has to do with what's objectively right and proper. Now, we've heard from him, and that kind of closes the discussion of good human life. I think of Parfit as kind of blending the traditions of the Platonists and the existentialists, because Plato said there's an objective way to live the best life. Sartre said there's no objective way. It's just everyone for their own viewpoint of what the best life is. And this author says it's kind of a blend, isn't it? There's something that's objectively good, but you got to want it. And so if you want it and you get it, and it's objectively good, then that's the best of all possible worlds. Okay, guys, so we're done then with this. Thanks for bearing with me and hanging in there for a slight minute over time. We'll be back on Wednesday. Don't forget to submit your papers if you have not already. I'm sending back everyone the confirmation that I got it. So I'll check my messages again right now as soon as I close this live stream. Anyway, have a great day. I'll see you back on Wednesday. Take a look at the study guide. And in 48 hours on Wednesday, we'll start breaking into that list. Okay, everybody, have a great one. And Take care. I'll see you on Wednesday then. Bye-bye.